Hey, everybody. Welcome to this week's edition of Indie Game Business. Very special guest today. We have Guy Blomberg, who has, revolutionized the networking in the industry through his gig, which, I'll admit I was skeptical at first, but I do love it now. It is, but before we get into all that, so we're going to talk about networking and what he's been doing with the gig and what it is and where it's going and all that kind of cool shit. But let's start where we always start. Tell us how you got in the industry, because you've already teased that that's an interesting story, and then walk us through your career. Tell us how you got here.
Yeah, sure, man. Hey, how you doing? Good to see you, and thanks for having me on, man. Revolutionized. I like this as a word. So, I got into let's go back to the beginning. I got into the games industry, and I guess this was the fun, kind of capture social media post I just made from the porn industry. So I was young. I needed the money. There's the opportunities that exist out there are very few for someone with not a lot of talent or experience. But no, I actually was a graphic designer, self-taught, and I made websites and got into like Flash animation and things like this way back in the day. And the only credible industry job that I could get as a graphic designer very early on, when I was like 19 years old, was in an adult company. And actually, at this particular point in time, this was back in Australia, the adult industry was an absolute massive industry back in Australia. Like, people didn't really talk about it, but I think the stat was a quarter of the world's adult websites were actually owned and operated by companies based in Australia. So there's a little known fact about the down under country. So within there, though, like, it was great. And to be fair, let's be clear, I wasn't working in porn. I was designing the websites, which is not exactly something necessarily to be proud of if you looked at a lot of those websites, but it was professional experience. It was more like working in an IT company with a bunch of other geeks and stuff like that.
You're working on retention. That's the thing. So
yeah, it was
it
was very much about those 3 tour pages and a free trial, trying to actually entice. Actually, you know what? It was fascinating because the psychology behind it that they employed within it was really interesting. Like, where does the eye go? Like, you always want to make sure that your next button or join now button is in the bottom right hand corner. Like, we're at the forefront of heat mapping technology in terms of where the eyes actually look and how it reads in different countries. Like, if you take the porn component out of it and just look at tech, and this has always kind of been the way, the adult industry is usually at the forefront of technology. And I got hired because of my experience and knowledge with vector animation, Flash animation, and that was like Flash 1.0. This was like, they were looking for new, different, interesting ways to deliver naked people doing naked things together in a digital format.
So once you moved over to the less sketchy world of video games,
so
what did you do then?
Sorry, I should probably clarify exactly how I made that jump. I don't want to be suggesting, hey everyone, you want to get into games? Well, here's a career path for you. No, the people I worked with were other geeks and tech people, and one of them was a good friend of mine, a PHP programmer by the name of Matt Burgess, and we just got along really well. And we were frustrated in Australia, as I'm sure a lot of people in other non-North American countries were back then as well, by the lack of representation. Means something a little bit different now, but back then there was really no gaming websites or news sites or review sites that were tailored towards the Australian market. A lot of games didn't come out until months after they came out in America, or they were censored in different ways, and it just you didn't have that Australian voice. So we started a website called AustralianGamer.com, and it was kind of modeled off a combination of Penny Arcade, where we had regular web comics that were going up. I was the designer and did cartoons, and your traditional like IGNs and GameSpots and stuff like that with reviews. And it became incredibly successful in the market. We back then, I guess the numbers were impressive. We would get close to 500,000 uniques every month. We had no idea. We had no business sense whatsoever. We just thought this was a fun thing to do. But that got me the attention and the connections with publishers that wanted to send us games to review, with other journalists that didn't thought we weren't real journalists and were pissed off with us, and everyone else in the games industry, and all the developers and studios that wanted that promotion through a traditional website, but had never had anyone in the Australian market to really talk for them. So that's how I got into the games industry, through the porn industry.
All right, so that's it. It's interesting that you mentioned the whole, journalists looked at game journalists going, "You're not real journalists," and then fast forward about 15 years, and game journalists looking at YouTubers going, "You're not real journalists. You're, it's the new guy is never the winner." That's the.
It's there's always the different mediums as well. Yeah, back then, like game critics, game journalists was very serious. We would call ourselves blurnalists because we felt we're a combination of bloggers and journalists, never serious enough to consider ourselves journalists, but always a little bit of a step above bloggers, because we felt a lot of the content we were doing wasn't just a personal recounting of things, and we were a collection of people doing reviews and whatnot. But yeah, you look at the ebbs and flows of the industry, and I think the rise of the personality-based presenters, and you had that within gaming journalists, but a lot of those people have actually gone on to become YouTubers or content creators in their own right. But yeah, this is an industry that's ever evolving. No part of it is immune to new technology, which makes the previous technology obsolete, not just in game dev, but Christ, I thought events were like pretty solid until 2020, so.
Yeah, how did that work out? So, I mean, that's actually a really good segue, because you come from traditional events. That's what you were doing before, COVID, which was. How has that? So, tell us what you were doing with PAX, for one, to lay that ground base. But then, what happened? How?
Yeah,
walk us through that transition between that and now.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating. Usually, the behind the scenes of how events are done, from small B2B to massive consumer-based events, is kind of a little bit hidden. Like, we always were very much, you don't want to see how the sausage factory is made, like the behind the scenes of these events. But recently, it's been much more transparent, because everyone's kind of been very obviously like, yeah, we can't run this event, so we have to try and figure out, what else we can do. I think a lot of it depends on the size and scale of the organization. For your large, massive corporate companies that have multiple big scale events, like, it's the process is much different. You've got, multi-million-dollar contracts with venues that need to be sorted out. You've got, agreements in place with publishers or sponsors. Like, there's a lot of moving parts. And to actually, whereas a smaller B2B event in, some European country of some sort will be like, oh yeah, okay, what, let's give digital a try. That'll be great. Like, it's easier for them to transition. So, it's very much about the risk side of things. So, yeah, with PAX, like, some of the smartest people in the world that work on that show, and have actually built that into the largest gaming event in North America and Australia. Like, they do what they do so well. The challenge was figuring out how to still bring that very unique PAX vibe and spirit to an authentic digital platform. And I was still there when we did a bunch of that last year with the PAX Online EGX collaboration, and it was it's all a test, right? Like, running it for 10 days for 24 hours a day. Like, is this going to work? What does the PAX audience want? What benefits the publishers and whatnot? It's a million miles an hour, and trying to figure out what works best is kind of sometimes throwing darts at a dartboard to see what sticks. But you got to try something, right?
That's how this show got started, and our events got started. I was like, no one else is doing this, so why don't we try it? And like I said before, we got to spend a lot of 2020 looking at the traditional events and them not doing it right, and going, yeah, we figured that out last year.
But I think I love what you've done, so and the path that you've taken, and the path that I've taken, and the path that I think the best events are the ones that actually grow organically. Like, it's quite bold and quite difficult to come into a market and go, this is what we are going to do. It's going to be huge, sort of thing, as opposed to what you've done. And what I did with Gig is we grew it out of what we saw as a need and a market that wasn't being catered to, or that we thought, if I was to do it, I would do it this way. And then you've actually got the resources, the knowledge, and the know-how, and also the entrepreneurial spirit to actually just do it. And if it doesn't work, well, you know what? That was a bit of fun. There's not much risk involved in it. But then you find it does work, and you're always surprised looking back and going, "Oh shit, this is a thing now. How did that happen?"
That's
so
it.
yeah.
Yeah, but trust me, that dartboard is still very much used. I mean, if we sit back and look at the stuff that we've done, even with my consulting firm over the last 10 years, and it's like stuff we're not ever doing. And now we've discovered, I wouldn't say accidentally, we got called up by a company and they said, I've known them for years. And they said, hey, we need you to do this. And I'm like, we've never done that, but we can. And it's been wildly successful. And now it is, a big part of what we do. No, I can't really go into detail, but
sure you can.
Without completely outing, exactly what it was. But that's it. That's entrepreneurship in this industry. It's like you can't sit down and go, okay, it's 2016 and we're going to make hyper casual games for the next 15 years. That doesn't happen. These things die out, they change. So for those of you who don't know what the gig is, I'll give you my take on it. So when we started doing, the IGB conferences, the criticism that we got, it's like, yes, this is very easy to match up to. You don't have to know anybody going in. The profile on Meet to Match tells you who they are, what they're looking for. You request a meeting, blah, blah, blah. That's done. And they're like, well, there's no networking. We want to replicate that experience in the Marriott lobby in San Francisco. And I'm like, tough. I don't know what to tell you. That's not going to happen. This is a meeting conference. Just shut the fuck up and go do whatever. And so then I see there's this guy on Zoom and they're doing Zoom meetings that are like kind of chat roulette-y. And I'm like, that sounds stupid as shit. I do not want to sit down and randomly get stuck in a room with other people. And no, that's not it. And then you reached out, you're like, hey, come here and just try this out. And I did it, one Friday afternoon. And I was like, oh my God, this is awesome. Because we're not going to recreate that whole experience of just like wandering through the hotel lobby and seeing 5 or 6 different people that we know and all that kind of good stuff. But I shit you not, you've done the best job so far. So what happens is, because gig is like got a velvet rope now and you have to apply to get in or you slide the bouncer $20, either way, whatever. What guy does is you start out, and correct me if I'm wrong, you start out in a big Zoom room. You're welcomed by the host, whoever the host is. And that's generally because all the rest of the people are in, their other rooms. And then when everybody comes back together, you get dumped into a giant Zoom, like 50 or 100 people. And you chit chat and you talk for like 5 or 10 minutes. And then everybody gets kicked randomly to a 6-person room, right? Or
yeah, 5 to 6 people. Yeah. That's the key. Yeah. Yeah.
And you just chat. And I'll let you take it because it is. I love it. I mean, so go ahead. Tell us.
I love it. You nailed it. Yeah.
So where did the idea, what made you sit down one day and go, I need to upgrade my Zoom account and invite random people?
So, I mean, look, I'm sure you're the same as me, and so many other folks are. When we used to go to gaming events and stuff like that, like a lot of the business that you do is not at the event itself. How many people like go to GDC, but they don't actually get a ticket to GDC? They just do the meet to matches or the hotels around it, right? Like that's where so much of the business is made, but it's also where so much of the random connections. That is probably one of my favorite parts of conventions that I've been to or run, basically. And when the pandemic hit, it's like you don't have that. You don't have that outlet to meet new people. Like, how do you meet new people in the games industry? So I started a Zoom call. I'm like, hey, you know what? Let's all get together regularly every Friday, and do a Zoom call. So I started with a couple of friends, and immediately you learn that a Zoom call does not work with more than about 5 or 6 people. Because one person asks a question and then 3 people try and answer, or they talk over each other, and it's a mess, right? So it again evolved organically. It's like, okay, well, let's send people to these breakout rooms. This is what like Zoom classrooms kind of are. Let's let's send people to those in like groups of 10 or so, and they can chat, and then we can bring them back. So we did that. And then it was like, oh, 10's too many. Maybe bring it down to like 5 or 6. And half an hour is too long. 10 minutes is too short for people to do introductions to each other. What about 20 minutes? That's good. Because what you don't want to be is in a giant Zoom room with 100 people all talking over each other. That's not networking. That's literally walking into a bar and standing there and not talking to each other and just hearing people yell at you, right?
Which is the authentic networking experience.
It is kind of like walking in,
conference.
yeah, and then like seeing someone or whatnot. But yeah, this idea of randomizing, each 20 minutes, sending people to these breakout rooms and randomizing it seemed to work really well. Initially, I was like, okay, we're going to need to prompt people to have conversations. Maybe when we send them to breakout rooms, we need to have like and your topic for this 20 minutes is, what's the worst pitch you've ever seen? Or your topic for this 20 minutes is, what's the best game you played in the last 10 years or something? Like, I thought we'd need to like prompt conversations. But the thing is, and the kind of key secret is, if you vet a group of industry folks, if you vet a group of people, any group of people, if you narrow it down so they have a shared interest or common goals or common topics that they can talk about or common news from the week, then 20 minutes, you introduce yourselves. It's like, oh man, you work in publishing, do you know this and I've met you before, yeah, we met at GDC last year. Like, the conversation just flows. It's not for everyone, don't get me wrong. Like, there's plenty of devs and introverted folks that are like, this is not for me, and that's fine. Neither is a bar at an event, So it was born out of this need and desire to network, and it will never replace the same feeling of going into a bar. But it's gotten, I think, as close as we possibly can during this pandemic and time of social distancing. The other thing I'll say is that initially, when I started this, I always assumed it was going to be a temporary thing. Like, this would be something that happens, and then, you know what, when we all get the vaccine and events happen again, we're all good, we can all get back together. But a weird thing started to happen with this, and that was that I started to associate with a bunch of other smarter people than me in amazing groups like Latinx in gaming or Black in gaming or gay gaming professionals, just basically people whose opinions I trust. I'm a straight white male middle-aged dude living in America, man. Like, I am not the best, a judge of
Yes.
like, how to make people feel comfortable. And I always go to bars and events, and I'm like, I feel great, I love this. But there are so many people, obviously, as we found out over the last couple of years too, that are like, that is not a safe place for me. I do not feel safe there. There's been a lot of issues in those kind of environments, and you manage to mitigate almost all of them with this digital space because people can leave anytime. They're not getting their drink spiked or anything like that. They're among friends and peers, and it's a vetted industry list where if someone is a shithead, then they get removed from this pool. And I think that, I don't know what the future will be, but I think there's a place for this type of interaction in collaboration, maybe with it. I actually have no idea. All I know is that in my head, this has proved to be more valuable than I expected, and it's fascinating. This never would have been a thing if there was no pandemic. We all would have probably been like, how do we make these socializing networking spaces better around gaming conventions and things like this? And we all would have been racking our brains. And this has been a really eye-opening experience. So I'm rambling now, but yeah.
No, it's good. So, I mean, you're sitting and you mentioned that it may not be the best for introverts, but obviously the people listening to the podcast can't see the shit that I'm putting on the screen. But we had, so Squid in the Box as a person with extreme social anxiety, gig is way better than, physical events. And Team Toad House said it's introvert friendly too, because after 20 minutes, you're forced to move around the room instead of getting caught in a corner in real life. And then there's the safety aspect. I mean, if someone puts something in your drink at a gig event, it was you. That was you need to stop drinking. You're dropping Altoids in your beer again. It is safer. And, so we had Nika, and Nika's one of your frequent hosts. We had Nika on the show a couple of weeks ago, and she said, it's been nice because for the last year, I haven't had to give my "this is how you stay safe as a woman" lecture before all these different conferences.
Right.
And it is a good, there is that benefit of, if somebody's an asshole, you kick them out. It's very simple. But it's you've done a good thing. That's the big part.
It feels that way. And again, I got to give credit to like the other people that gave me direction, that helped with the wording and the phrasing of the content and the policies, and even folks that didn't end up partnering with us. Pixels, the group up in Montreal, actually gave me a lot of great feedback on the policies and stuff. But they didn't want to completely promote the project. They were like, this is still outside of our wheelhouse. I'm like, that's great. There were a lot of people like that just wanted something like this to work, but they were still kind of skeptical, and that's fair enough. But I think the interesting thing is not just people feeling safe or feeling comfortable with the fact they can leave, or like it's a less intimidating environment than a real place, but trying to curate the diversity of the membership of the people that join, to try and make it so not every room is just filled with
white dudes.
5 or 6 straight male white dudes. Like, it's I would never consider that's not a threatening space to me at all. But for a lot of folks, they go into a room like that, it's like, oh yeah, okay, typical, but by trying to control the diversity, and to be honest, you just control the diversity by actually just having a wait list of white dudes. I'm sorry, it's
the same thing that we, I do the very same thing with our speakers, and I'm literally in the middle of setting up speakers for the event in the next that's coming in.
Of course,
pointed out like, oh, your event's 18 days away, and I'm like, oh, thank you for reminding me.
Keep reminding me. Yeah, tell me about that every day. I love that. Yeah,
I do really try. We don't always get full parity, but I always try to have equal male female representation. The Latin community, the gay community, the BIPOCs. It's hard, not because of a lack of effort, but because most of the submissions that we get on our site for speaking are white dudes. I turned away a very, very large company at our last event because they tried to force feed me a speaker. And normally this is one of those companies that if they say we have a speaker, you're like, okay, yes, because I want your logo on the event.
Yeah.
They sent me the speaker, and I was a white guy. And I'm like, look, I am up to my neck in white dudes right now. It's like, I said, you bring me a woman, somebody who is unrepresented in the industry, get some different voices, get some different diversity in here. And I said, you're in. And they went back and they kept that guy in. And they're like, but we have this other person. And it was a young woman, person of color. And she had been in the industry for like a year. And I'm like, you literally just put her in there so I would take it. So I said, she can speak, but I don't want the other guy. And they backed out.
But I think that's great. Nothing changes if nothing changes. And it's people that are in positions of authority that have the ability to affect change. I consider I'm in that position with the gig. You're in this position, sort of thing, and I feel that I will never understand, the struggles and the challenges and the plights of a lot of folks in different positions. I'm never going to be like, oh, I get it now. I understand.
No,
that will never be a thing. But and I'll always make mistakes as well, even with the gig. Like there's growing it. So there was, things I did, which, people would call me out and friends would call me out and be like, oh, that's not the way to go. Or you're not being a good ally, or you're not doing this. And it's like, I will never figure it out. I'll never be perfect. The key is to constantly have other people that are involved in it that are like, well, this is what you should do. This is always striving to be better, to be what we would like the games industry to be. We're not going to get more diverse speakers unless folks can actually look at the panels and the content that's happening and actually see themselves represented on there, so they feel comfortable actually being part of the conversations as well. So I really actually do think it is the responsibility, and it's easier with you and I that are in scrappy kind of like, I don't give a fuck, we'll run this however we want, compared to a lot of the larger events that are established. It's harder for them to actually change and take risks, I think. Whereas, it's exciting.
One of the advantages that I have with indie game business versus, even places like PAX and these big events, that they have these long-standing norms that they have to adhere to for all these sponsors that have been giving them tens of thousands of dollars all the year. I don't have sponsors giving us tens of thousands of dollars.
To be clear, though, Jay, like
if you
you'll
want
take
to,
sponsors,
yes,
you'll take.
Yes, I've had to grow this team significantly, and we are absolutely looking for sponsors. But it's like I'm not obligated. If you come in and you want something completely random, I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. No. It's you do have a bit of autonomy that goes along with it, but it's still funny because but yeah, let me be very clear. We are absolutely looking for sponsors. All right, so we've got a few questions coming in, and this is got to be one of the important ones. How can we attend one of the Zoom events?
Oh yeah, okay. So go to games.industrygathering.com, or actually, I think I got the other domain, just gamesindustrygathering.com. You'll find it, and register. And I got to be honest with you, like the vetting process isn't flawless. It's not perfect. Like it can take some time for approval. It's entirely manual. So, but please, you can reach out and be like, hey, where are you at with the application? Is everything? Do you need more information? A lot of the time, it's just trying to find out, folks, are they actually in the games industry? Are they who they say they are as well? To try and avoid, you don't want someone coming in and being like, I represent this person. Like, just can you prove who you are? Send me an email from this address that we see on this, so it's a very manual process. But go there, register. Ideally, if you can get someone else who's in the gig to refer you, because we do ask who referred you. Because if you do turn out to be an asshole, I can always go back to that person who referred you and be like, "What the fuck are you doing?"
We can contact trace assholes now.
Yeah. And I think, look, I gotta be honest, the other freedom and flexibility of starting something like this from scratch, where it's not beholden to sponsors or a commercial nature, is that you can kind of take a very aggressive approach towards harassment or issues that are happening. I think, realistically, a lot of large events they have to be held accountable to, this person said this, well then we need to report it, and let's bring other third party mitigate. Like there's a whole process, and that's completely fair enough and reasonable, and I understand that. But with a gig, it's like, this you feel unsafe, or this person harassed you, well, they're being kicked, and that's it. Is it fair? No, but if that's going to make the majority of people actually feel comfortable in that space, that's what I want this to be. So that's what it is.
We are dictators of our own domain, but we are benevolent dictators.
Yeah, it's kind of it's nice to be in a position to actually do what I think is the right decision by my morals and ethics, and what I think is I don't know. I just think it's something that is maybe a little bit different. That I'm not saying it's for everyone. I'm not even saying it's the right thing to do. But it's the way it's been set up, and it seems to be working. So,
all right. So here's a question, but I'm going to preface this. Nightwolf, you are not allowed to bail on my community to go hang out at Guy's community. Okay, this is not what the show is for.
Hey, Jay, come on. We have plenty of people in both Discord servers. Come on, that's
so Nightwolf says, are there any minimum requirements for joining, since the FAQ said for game industry professionals only, required to be currently in the industry, or okay for just getting in process or getting active?
Yeah, we want people that are in the games industry, or were in the games industry, and maybe they're looking for jobs or whatnot. But to be honest, it's not open to students, or folks that are looking to get in the games industry, or people that are just fans of games. And it's gatekeeping, and it sucks, but it is the point of the gig, to actually provide a space where when you go into a randomized Zoom room, you kind of know that everyone there has a bit of professional investment in the games industry in some way, shape, or form. You kind of know everyone's either hustling, or they've got that experience there. I do want to do, and some people I've seen have done some spin-off things for to connect students with folks in the games industry. But Jay, as I'm sure you would know, like it's a lot of curation and management of the industry folks to actually come into those groups and actually educate and spend time with the students. It becomes more work as opposed to just the socializing. So it's a long-winded way to say, yeah, games industry folks only at the moment. But I'll be honest with you. There's a couple of students that I know have squeaked through the vetting process, and to them, I'm like, you know what? Good for you. Well done, you cheeky.
And Nightwolf had a follow up that he's and Nightwolf is a long standing probably one of the longest viewers of this show.
Right.
And he's doing grad student, and he said if grad student doing research, and getting into it works, and there's your answer, Nightwolf. You just gotta sleep.
Look,
don't
I gotta be honest. The process is not like it's not binary. It's not like yes or not. Like there is a little bit. I mean, the biggest confusion actually sometimes is a content creator. How many followers should a content creator have before they're actually admitted to the gig? What is there a certain size or level? And a lot of the time, you just kind of, it depends on who's helping with the vetting process, and they're like, I think this person would add a lot. And there's other people that have like massive, creator accounts, but for them, it's just a part-time hobby that they're doing. It's not like they're looking for it to be their career. And I think a lot of this is trying to get folks where it's like this is their focus. This isn't a side job that they do at night. This is what they want to do with their lives, and getting people with that mentality is kind of what we're looking for.
So yeah, Brain says, thank God I'm grandfathered in. And now that you're mentioning that there are like follower requirements, like holy shit, I'm glad I'm in already, because there's no way that we've got enough to fit that in. So
I'd like to do more stuff. Like I was talking to the a couple of groups that maybe actually bringing in some mentees with some programs from underrepresented countries or things like that, just to give them that networking experience. Because that's the other challenge. Like think about this, man. Like when I first started out in the industry, like all these networking opportunities were great. Think of anyone that graduated last year. There's no events. There's no network. There's no socializing. It's hard. I get it. Like it's hard.
That's the reason. So last summer we took what we do with the business to business conferences, and I was like, okay, so we can do this for people looking for jobs too. And we had a whole lot of interest. And I'm sitting here thinking, it's like, I've never worked as a recruiter. I don't know the hell. I don't think I've ever actually been hired by somebody outside of the first job that I came out of college with. Ever since then, it's been like, I stayed there, and I can't even tell you how to do a resume properly. I've never had to have one. But I was like, let's just do a career fair, because everybody's virtual now, and it was so absolutely frustrating, because the companies that showed up with jobs wanted people to hire locally. And I'm like, this is you're missing the point here. But part of it was because I had seen what happened at PAX Boston, because that was like the last big event before everything got shut down. And I was seeing so many people on Twitter, even in our Discord, going, well, if I can't go to GDC, how am I going to get a job? And I'm sitting here going, if your job getting strategy is flying to San Francisco and I was like, we have bigger problems as an industry. But it was very frustrating when we ran that career fair, because it did not go the way I had anticipated. Luckily, months later, I find out that, one of the groups that we worked with, I was talking to them, and they said, we had like 6 people get jobs through that event, and I was like, holy shit, you could have told me that like 6 months earlier, when I was like completely just irritated and down because it didn't work. But you really don't. And we've done a couple of shows on how do you network during a pandemic. And it's like, there's Discord, but that's not the same.
No.
And what you're doing is a really good solution. And yes, the entrepreneur side of me goes, I do know, I recognize I've been doing this for 20 some years. Professionals in the industry start to tune out at events when it starts becoming too student oriented. It's shitty, but it happens. It's a reality. I've seen it happen. How can we help all these other, groups involved? I mean, I saw, and I'll let you clarify this if you want, I saw something on Twitter about other types of gig events that are going on in other industries.
Yeah. So there's a bunch of spin-offs, which is basically just good folks coming to me and saying, "Hey, look, the gig thing is great. Do you think we could do this around a more focused segment of the community?" So there's a Black in Gaming industry gathering. There's Key Creators for women non-binary folks. Key Creators industry gathering. There's oh god, I've forgotten. There's a comics industry gathering for folks in the comics industry. I think there's one more, but I've forgotten it. Oh my god! But yeah, there's other ones that are taking off. It's interesting you talk about the you know, helping students. I was involved in an event at the tail end of last year, the Games Industry.biz Academy event, and everyone's trying stuff, man. Everyone's iterating, everyone's seeing what works and what not, and it's hard to actually get your metrics for success from an event like that until afterwards when you hear the actual stories, because it's not about how many people attended, it's about how many people got a job or it helped their career afterwards. That's the metric for success from those. But it's kind of hard to determine what that actually means. But it's also not a socializing thing. Anyone in the industry that attends those things, it's work. They're there and they're going to spend their time you know, talking to students or talking to people wanting to get into the games industry, and it's going to be a constant kind of, well, let me give you advice and let me look at your portfolio. Let me tell you who you should talk to. Let me teach you and impart knowledge. It's important, but it's not socializing. It's not a casual gig kind of like, yeah, let's talk about our favorite Muppets for 20 minutes. Like it's a different level of conversation. So I think an event that's around students or folks looking to get into the games industry and connecting them with industry professionals, the curation on that and the intent to get the industry involved is a lot more involved. Like it's a lot more work and effort than just a casual gathering, I think.
All right, so we had people that are going to the wrong URL. Is that the URL that I just posted? games.industrygathering.com?
Games.industrygathering.com. Yes.
Okay. All right. That's where you go. Go there.
Or I registered another domain. Go to thezoomwhereithappens.com.
Are you see?
I love Hamilton, man. I love Hamilton and puns. So
that's awesome. So I mean, there are, you know, conversations that you and I need to have about, you know, our event, because this is when we were shopping around, and obviously Meet to Match powers all of our meetings.
Yeah,
but in terms of, you know, this aspect of it in the videoing and in the networking, you know, I know Meet to Match has some stuff that they're working on to, you know, solve some of the networking stuff. It's very cool. I've seen it.
Yep.
But we haven't had it to this point. And ideally, I know what I want you to do. I want you to run a gig for 3 days while, you know, my conference is going on so people can drop out and do it. But you're not going to do that. I know.
Well, let me tell you a couple of other, like,
I'm putting him on the spot. That's what
no. Here's the thing. There's a bunch of learnings that we've taken away from all this gig stuff, and that is that we've run a couple of 24-hour gigs before, usually in collaboration with some other big event. We did one for the Game Jam in collaboration with them, like a couple of a week ago. God, time doesn't matter, whatever. But like, you know, recently, and the problem is that the time zones, you've got folks in different countries that are going to join at different times. You might have some, you know, for like 2 hours, there's only like 10 people in the room and 2 breakout rooms. And then, you know, 2 hours later, you've got like 100 people, and it's a different kind of ebb and flow. And if you don't, I feel this way about events in general. Like, some people will say, why would you even need to do an event that connects people? You could just create a website or a platform that actually does it 365 days of the year. Yeah, that's true. But events focus people to it's like a funnel that pushes people towards a goal at the same time. If we ran the gig 24 hours, 365 days a year, every time you'd go into it, it'd probably be pretty empty. You know, there might be 2 or 3 people in there having a bit of a chat, but it events, even digital events, force people to come together at certain times, and it's like this social feeling that I think you miss if you spread it out. So
it is, and I did not intend for I think this is our 8th or 9th event that's coming up in a couple of weeks.
That's crazy, man. Congrats.
Well, appreciate it. Didn't think it would go this long. It's like, I'll do this, and then, you know, when real events come back, and that's not happening anytime soon. And then, you know, everybody started doing it last year, and I was like, there's no way people are still going to come to our event when they can do all of these other ones that they already know. But I cheat, and we have advantages like we don't gatekeep videos, and a ticket's only $50. And
Sure.
but the reality is, it has to be those. You have to have that. It's like even when we did our December event, I was like, there's nobody that's going to come to this. It's like I run these events and I'm sick and tired of them this year. It's one of those, but we had a great turnout, and, a lot of people, because that's what happens. It's like, yes, I see other places building these 24/7 platforms, and I do admit there's a place for them, because I'm working on one with two partners, outside of this. It's not really a secret. I mean, we had them on the show, but the reality is, we still need these events to focus people's attention, and it still works like that.
Yeah. I'll say two notes as well. First of all, I think that we are done with the age where it is just physical events and that's the focus. When events come back, consumer events, B2B events, they will have a much larger digital component to them. Digital events are not just happening now, then they're going away. Digital events will now be, this is it. We will absolutely have digital components of every physical event that happens going forward. Like, you will be able to go to events, but there'll be a massive digital component. I truly believe that, and other folks that I know and that run the event companies feel the same way. That's definitely one of them. Second one is the fatigue of events. The problem is that all of a sudden, every tiny little conference in Indonesia or in Poland or whatnot is now accessible. So the fatigue of, like, every week there's an event, there's a conference, is just exhausting, sort of thing. So it's the people that are running the events have to cut through it with more than just another panel talking about how to pitch your game. Like, you need more.
That's the other struggle that I have doing our events, because for a long time we didn't do talks at our conferences, because I was like, I'm literally bringing people on every week, sometimes twice a week, to talk on this show. Yep. I don't need to do another one. And then I gave in and started doing it. But because all of our stuff is always out there, somebody wants to listen to something that we talked about at our August 2020 event, it's there, it's not hidden. So it's like, I can't run around and go, okay, we're going to do another how to pitch to a publisher talk, because we've done that 3 times already. It's going out and finding, new stuff, new people to talk about. And that's where the new views and the new looks on stuff came in, because, and I'll tell you, this week we changed the name of the conference from, Mid-Stride, because, I mean, hell, why not? That's the, so, I mean, they're still called Indie Game Business Sessions, but we were naming them based on the season of the year, spring, winter, blah, blah. And a friend of ours goes, you do know that it's not spring down here in South America. And I went, shit, you're right. And so if folks, if you wonder why it's now called water, we switched to elemental themes. So we're doing water, air, earth, Jello, whatever,
fire, all the airbender things. Come on.
No, all right. So listen, that of course that came up. That's an element, and I was like, we cannot have an event called Fire Season, because it'll be
the Fire Festival
in California. No, like,
okay.
They actually have a fire. And I'm like, we're not going to do that. We have to find something else. So,
okay, but see, here you go. Now you want to call it a water festival when there's been floods down in Australia?
God, now listen, Romy's already redone the art once. I'm not going to tell Romy to redo the art again.
That's fair.
All you porn entrepreneurs down in Australia, y'all can just be fine.
I remember this when, last year when E3 didn't happen, and everyone from IGN to Keeley and groups were doing Summer of Gaming. And of course, as an Australian living over here in America, I'm like, I get it. But, this is a very kind of, American, like, it's because it's summer. It's like, man, there's the rest of the world out there.
Yes. So that was pointed out to us, a couple of weeks ago, and it was like, yeah, we should probably fix that. And so That's why
That's
it's
good. That's
now
good.
the
I think
Water
that's great.
2021 event.
Nice.
So
Nice.
is this your new thing? Is this what you're going to be doing? I mean, are you growing this into something bigger and better, or where does gig go from here?
I don't know, man. I actually have no idea. Like there's ideas around maybe, in the back of my head, I keep thinking when physical events come back, maybe there can be gig parties that happen, in around these events that are only open to people that are members of the gig. Again, keeping that vetted, curated, thing. And if someone's a scumbag and they get ejected from that event, they get ejected from the gig. Like it's not just it's a real, kind of sense of that. But I don't know. Hey, does anyone have any ideas what it should do? I think it's more of just it's something that the industry needed.
Yeah.
And as long as it's needed, we're going to keep doing it. Like originally at the beginning of this year, talking with the rest of the hosts that give their time every Friday, 3 hours at a time to actually host this, we're like, maybe we should break this down into like once every 2 weeks or once every month. Like it is a bit of time to actually put it together and vet the interest. Maybe we should break this down. And then we tried that for a bit, and people were like, I need this. I don't have anything else. I don't have another way to socialize.
Look,
Like this is
I pitched you to my the very last Pocket Gamer meeting I just had before we went live. The person I was meeting with was like, they're in the UK, they're live by themselves. He goes, my kids come by and visit every now and then, but otherwise I'm just here. And I'm like, you need to go to this. And I said him because it gets our social on every now and then.
Yeah, exactly. So I think there's I mean the IGB, the thing that's coming up. Like we'll do a gig for around your audience. We're going to do it around other events. I'm going to tie it into and work closer with some other organizations that have membership things like this as well. I'm working for Xsolar going forward across their diamond club of developers and publishers and distributors, and I'm like, as opposed to looking at that and going, well, how do we create social things in there? I'm like, let's just let's build up a big gig thing that combines that or does a whole bunch of really beneficial stuff for the industry. It's trying to just figure out ways. The other one is trying to figure out ways where there's always new people joining, and it's constantly growing. And so it's not just the same people every week. That's fine, but that isn't the spirit of what this is supposed to be. It's supposed to be, you meet new people. So that's the hardest thing, just to keep it going and keep it growing and keep inviting people.
And see, if you as an attendee, if you show up at different times of day, that's the other beautiful thing. It's not like you're going into a room and you might talk to somebody in that corner that you didn't meet before. This is a party that if you come in 3 hours later, it's at a completely different party.
Time zone and people is completely different, which is wonderful. It's so good. Like, I love the fact that like the Friday night for this event, late at night, like midnight EST time, you've got a bunch of folks from Australia and Singapore that are jumping in because it's their Saturday afternoon, and it's like it creates a completely different vibe, which is, I think, wonderful. And they'd never be able to get to any events that are happening in the States easily. So yeah, stuff like that is pretty fun.
So, and one, I got to give Xsolar a shout out as well. They have been a anchor for us. If you go back and look, since we started having sponsors, Xsolar has been there for us. So thank you, folks. We do appreciate that. And to everybody else, yes, we still need sponsors.
They've been great, man. Eugene and the gang there that do the Diamond Club. The reason, like, I'm going and doing stuff with them is because they've created a club that is free and creates value and gives tickets to people. Like, it's good for the industry, and to be part of that, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So yeah.
That's the thing. And you see so many of these companies and they're like, we're going to try to do everything. We're going to do conferences and we're going to do special clubs and we're going to do classes and we're going to do all this other stuff. And it's like, I don't want to turn around and figure out how to replicate what you did so I can add it to my conferences. I just want to call you and go, Guy, we'll cross promote, we'll do whatever. I need, one of these things going on. And you have to have that in this industry. If you try to do everything, you're not going to do it well. And so
I think the other interesting thing is that a lot of people with their events are going down the road of trying to create a lot of different technologies and whatnot. Like I've seen a lot of the networking stuff that folks, the isometric 3D things where you go into like a little Habbo Hotel thing, IAB. I think it's magical what they're doing. But the barrier of entry to teach people and train people up on the new pieces of software is it's a barrier. It's a barrier that gets people involved in it, and I think it can be quite tough. I think that's why the gig thing works, because it's just Zoom, and everyone uses it, and it's like it's super easy and it's not complicated. You don't need to learn a new program or something like that. It's just there, So I love the idea of replicating something that's more around the events that we do and whatnot, but like the barrier is very real, especially in this time of pandemic. Do we really need another video or networking? I've got Zoom and Teams and Google and freaking WhatsApp and like just and then all the Weibo and WeChat and like, do we need another one?
All right, so here's the one, because I'm with you. I'm like, but here's the thing that I've seen some companies doing that I think is awesome. They're doing their stand-ups and their team meetings like in Red Dead Online. We can do gig Valheim, and have dedicated servers for that part. I do think is cool, but no, you're not going to get all those people because not everybody has the game and not everybody has, and those games like max out like 10 people. So
yeah, I will say that I actually think based on my experience with consumer events, I think the future of a lot of consumer events is in-game events. I think you look at Fortnite and what they've done with the Party Royale, what they have with the live concerts that's happened. Christ, Post Malone is doing an appearance in Pokemon coming up, sort of thing. I think
Post Malone looks like a Pokemon.
Yeah, actually, his avatar actually looks kind of freaky, to be fair. But
what is his second evolution anyway? So,
oh god, but it's. I actually think that when you're looking for digital platforms for events, go to where the people are. And a lot of us old school gamers can be a bit, maybe we're a bit dismissive of Fortnite sometimes, but that's where folks are. That's the audience where it is. And you know what? I think it's the cleverest, savviest thing in the world to run an event in Fortnite for that audience and demographic that are the majority of gamers out there, frankly. And I expect and anticipate much more of that going forward.
It's there. I saw there was an article last year about a podcast who built an arena in creative mode of Fortnite, and that's where they run it from. So
right.
They sit around and it's basically a stream. Instead of you and I sitting here in front of our webcams, they're just streaming this big. They built a TV set in Fortnite, and I think that's cool as hell. That is you've got this entire generation now. It's like our generation, we're getting old. That's the reality of it. But with that comes, Tim Sweeney was, he was the nerd growing up too, just like the rest of us.
Sure.
And now he's doing this. And so now we're in charge and we can start doing these cool things. And then you've got people like my son. And I honestly, he's very social. He got that from me. He's extroverted. He needs to be around people. And you can see during the course of this pandemic where it was just having an effect on him.
Sure.
But if he hadn't had Minecraft and Roblox and Fortnite, this is what gets me. He'll be like, Dad, get on Fortnite with me. I'm like, all right, we're going to run squads. We're going to own people. And even if I can get 3 of his friends into a squad, they all jump out at random places anyway. And I'm like, but they get in there and they do creative mode. I logged on one day. He goes, we're doing a fashion show, Dad. You need to get your best outfit on that looks like a dog. And I'm like, we're doing what? It's like,
but
I just wanted to shoot people.
This is the thing. And like, this is way deep down a rabbit hole, but it is fascinating. And it's something that we put a lot of time, and thought into in terms of events, like your demographics. Like previously, when you talk about gaming events, like you kind of are focused on gamers. It's like people that have grown up playing games, appreciate the craft, and are fans of the games and whatnot. I'm someone that I grew up playing, Mario on the NES, and it's like you've got your gamer kind of badge. What's up, gamers? I'm sure a lot of the geek people will be familiar with that, but also there was this feeling of being ostracized. It's like, it's not cool to play games. You're part of the nerds or the geeks or whatnot. So we grew up with that particular vibe. Whereas the folks who play games now, the teenagers playing games they're not gamers. They're not gamers in the respect that they're not moviers or TV showers or anything like that. It's just, these are the games they play. And it's actually, if you don't play games, you're kind of left out in the cold now. It's not uncool not to play games. In fact, become a Twitch streamer is your aspirational goal, not a movie star or celebrity.
Oh my God, his entire class. I mean, he's like in 3rd grade, and you ask him. It's like when I was that age, when you were that age, we were going to be policemen and firemen and doctors and lawyers. You go in that classroom now, it's like, what do you want to be? A YouTuber?
Yeah.
I'm like, it's actually easier to be a professional basketball player than it is to be a successful YouTuber. So
it's the point of difference in demographics. Now, we used to have differences in terms of, PC or console players or whatnot. Now there is this massive difference in age brackets and demographics and experience that have two very different associations with playing games. One based on experience and knowledge and almost, being ostracized, and the other where this is how they socialize. This is just as natural as breathing and anything else. And they usually only play 1 or 2 games. Like, it's very focused games that they play with their friends. It's a means to connect. So those two groups tend to clash heads quite frequently. So how do you create experiences or conventions or things around them? Man, that is way down the consumer gaming event rabbit hole, but it's fascinating stuff, man.
I was just saying, it's not that far down the road because we're already doing it, and one of the things I would love to do if I ever get around to actually having time to apply for a mega grant for this, little hobby that has grown drastically out of control, of which you should talk to Manny Hatchie. She has our sponsor deck. Anyway, it's like, sit down with things like Core from Manicore, what Frederick and those have done. And they basically built this entire system for fast prototyping games in Unreal. And I'm like, we could literally go in and build a game university in Unreal and then run shows through that. I mean, that it's not that far off. We can do it now. Somebody just has to do it. That's the catch.
I'm excited to actually see what happens in the next couple of years. I think there are a lot of people creating a lot of interesting programs that are forced to do so because of the distancing and the pandemic. And once everyone kind of realized that this is our reality for some time, it's not a light switch. Things won't get flicked back on immediately. There's residual for this that's going to last for a while. The idea of creating more authentic virtual spaces or different ways to connect, or dare I even say the word metaverse? I'd prefer not to, but there's all these different things that are going to happen in the next 5 years and come about that's just we haven't even thought of. It's actually, I think it's really cool actually. So
I want to jump down this rabbit hole. And by the way, if we have a ton of conversation going on in chat because we have inherited a lot of the good gig folks in here. If you all have questions, realize that I have no moderator. Andy's still on vacation. So if you ask a question and I missed it, tag me so I see it. But if you got questions, toss them in here. We're going to answer them. I want to jump down that rabbit hole for a minute.
Okay.
In an ideal world, let's say you and I go out and we talk to Epic and we get a mega grant and it's whatever, however much we need.
Sure.
What would we build for the industry around networking and community? What's the pipe dream?
Well, there's two sides to it. One of them is how do you build up something that I don't think there's one thing, man. I think there's multiple smaller things that actually add up to a whole. I think even the gig or meet to match or things like they fulfill certain promises. I think the one thing that's missing at the moment, I don't want to talk too much about it because I know there's some folks working on stuff, is a repository of folks that can actually speak at conferences from underrepresented groups like that. I think that's something that.
Wait, does that exist?
Not yet. I don't think so.
I need that.
Yeah, we all need that sort of thing. So, but then the question is, how do things come back in a physical capacity? What does that look like, and how do you actually involve people in different countries? To get involved. Not everyone can afford to fly to San Francisco and stay in GDC. Fucking people that live in San Francisco, can't afford to stay in San Francisco.
I've been blunt about how. So I read before we started doing the conferences. Part of it was I sat down in 2018, and I was like, how much money I spent traveling to conferences. I did not get, but if I wanted to go to San Francisco in 2019, obviously not last year, and have the full experience, all access pass, so I can go to the talks. I'm on the East Coast. I'm not even coming in internationally. It would have run close to 10 grand by the time I got done with flights and hotels. And that's, I don't stay in 4 or 5 star hotels. I stay in the safest looking one that I can walk to, and I don't think I'm going to get stabbed.
Yeah, somewhere down the Tenderloins. Yeah, you're all good.
I'm tenderloinish. Yes. Because it to me, it's like, if I'm being sent to a conference and somebody else is picking up the tab, I will absolutely take the nice cushy hotel room. But otherwise, it's like I don't necessarily
I think
that, but it's still 10 grand.
But I think that's the thing, is for the most folks, it's their company. It's a write-off. It's an expense. It's something that is expense to the company, or the company pays for it, or even if they're a small to mid studio, like they factor it in as marketing costs, sort of thing. But that's the problem, is that then almost like, cancels out anyone that isn't just able to expense that against, some, $10,000 revenue they are or aren't getting from that game, and that itself is a form of gatekeeping, which I think with a physical convention where it's supposed to be about educating and bringing the industry together in that respect, it's frustrating. And to be fair to GDC's credit, and to a lot of other organizations' credit, they try and do a lot with programs to fly people in and do a lot of stuff. It'll never be enough, unfortunately. So
you can't help everybody, but the problem that we saw for so long is that there were no options for the people that's what we're trying to, that's what we're trying to solve. It's like, here's an option. It's like our master classes. So our first master class is in 3 hours. The first one is finally happening. Elaine is going to do it.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. She's great. Are there any tickets left, or is it?
Yeah, there are. Trust me. And so
she's amazing. Go do a masterclass.
It's she's doing on how to design. I mean, how to develop as a designer. So if you're in Unity and you're the designer, but anyway, we do these things for $250 instead of $1,000 for these other ones, and we do it because it is more. I'm not going to sit there and go, hey, for $250 you get the same access to shit that we do for free on the conferences. No, this is like a 3-4 hour thing. It's well done, and we're compensating the people fairly, not the other way that it's being done. And for everybody that buys one, we give one away to somebody. So she said to me last night, going, how many more tickets do I have to give away? I'm like telling her. And but I'll tell you my frustration. It's like, we have gotten no press on this, and it's not because we haven't tried. It's the outreach that we've gotten is from people like you and people like our other event partners that have said, this is the IGDA helped us. They put us, in their newsletter, and we did that sort of stuff, but we have not been able to get an ounce.
Okay. Well, look.
I'm ranting.
Let's take this offline. Let me introduce you to some folks, man. Like, that is there should be more talking about this, because God knows there is conversations to be had in terms of spaces where people can actually go for masterclasses, especially and between GDC and yourself and what Rami and crew are doing. There's a lot of people out there that are trying a bunch of things, and it should be promoted. It should be more recognized in the industry. So let's talk about that, man. Let's have a chat about that.
So it was funny because when GDC sent that first email out last year, and they're like, we're doing this, and it's $1,000. It's like, that was my first message. I sent one to Rami, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to do something. Are you going to do something? I'm assuming you're going to do something. I was like, I'll keep you in the loop on what I'm doing. Let me know what you're doing. That way we're not like offering the same classes and shit, So, So sorry, somebody record. I'm sure I slaughtered that name, but anyway, can you discuss the barrier to entry differences? So ticket prices in visual, in these versus live conferences, and so you can give a little more insight into this, because there's a reason. It's like, I can afford to give tickets away for $50 or even less, because I don't have to pay for a lot of the shit that So give us
Yeah. Look, the interesting thing here is with live events, there's a lot of costs that are associated that feel unfair. As in, like, the booth cost is expensive, or if you've ever had a booth at a gaming convention, it's like, wait, I need to pay how much to access the internet? What, you can't just give me a second, like,
And you can't
power
plug
drop
it
here?
in.
Like,
The
yeah,
union
exactly.
people have to plug it in.
That's
Yes.
right. Oh, it needs to be tagged and tested. How much is that going to cost me? Oh, you're like, and even like buying stuff like food and stuff. It's like, wait, this croissant is like $12. Are you fucking kidding me? Like, there's this perception that it's like it's the event and the convention that's like, gouging and whatnot. But the cost to run a physical event, from the hire of the venue, and then like that venue itself, like, the expectations of how much internet costs for them to actually provide to all the people in it. Like, there are just so much hidden costs behind running a large event, and then you don't even think of like the team behind them. It's not just marketing and sales and content and whatnot. There's ops, there's legal, there's finance, there's all the accounts managers, there's all the people that are making sure that the liability insurance stuff is looked after, that there's like, it's huge to run a physical event. So the costs traveled onto that makes that's why things are differently priced. That's why tickets are so expensive or whatnot. Whereas an online event, you don't have most of those costs. You have the labor of folks that are actually working on it and putting the content together. You have the folks that are building the structure of the website or using a third-party program, but it's vastly different. I think the danger, though, is in people equating the cost of a live event to the cost of a physical event, and actually comparing the quality of the content and saying, well, this one's cheaper, it's less important, or this one is overpriced or whatnot. Like, there's a lot that goes on in the middle there, and the experiences are very different. Sitting in a auditorium and actually being there and watching someone on stage, and then going out afterwards and maybe having a chat with them, or being in that room, like, that is a very different experience to sitting in your underwear watching something on a computer. Like,
I'm wearing pants.
Okay, good. There's no judgment. There's no judgment.
They're like pajama pants, but I mean, I'm wearing them. That's the
So, like, the difference in cost between physical and digital, and those costs on set, given to the people that are paying to actually take part or attend them, is just because the cost of physical events is crazy. Think airport costs. Like, you're there in the airport, so the airport's going to charge you more. It's like an airport tax, right? They're going to charge you more for that particular item. Conventions have the same thing. It's like you're running a convention and you don't have a choice. You can't go anywhere else. Can't set up a booth like, well, I guess Devolver actually sets up a booth in the car park opposite E3. But
for years they've been doing that.
but you know what I mean. So that's the difference in costs. If that
my favorite was when E3 finally had so much. They were so done with Devolver, and going back to the old God and all that other stuff. They actually lined a bunch of tractor trailers up against the fence so you couldn't see it. And I'm like, everybody still knows it's there. It's like, you're not.
But it was frustrating. I gotta be honest. Like, when I was more involved with PAX down in Australia, like, Activision or other companies wouldn't be on the show floor. They'd set up, an activation in an area called Fed Square, which was like, a bit of a walk just down the way. And of course, they're capitalizing on the brand and the traffic and all the people that you're bringing in, but they're not actually giving anything back to the convention. As an organizer, it's exceptionally frustrating, but you can also kind of appreciate the hustle of that publisher to be cheeky, like, there's just like, oh, God damn it. Well done, but fuck you.
We had done some work with live events on the consulting side before, years ago. And I would walk through the conferences and the person who ran it would be like, fuck that guy. He's over there setting up meetings. He does it every event. And it's like, we all know, we sit here and joke. It's like, when was the last time we actually bought a GDC pass? Because all the business happens in the Marriott and the hotels and everything around the place.
I'm with you, but I also want to give a bit of a shout out to, like, the fact that there's a lot of people that go to GDC that don't have those networks and don't have the ability to actually, like, I've been to a couple of GDC panels, and I'm not a developer, so they're not quite for me, but like, there is a lot of good content. It's just, to be honest, man, it's just always easy to kind of, shit on the big group that's doing their big thing and go, oh, if I could do it, I'd do it differently. The difference is that you are doing it differently. So you're actually putting your money where your mouth is a little bit, and I think that's good. I think the competition and the challenge is good for other folks to kind of do things that question. And let's be honest, if there was ever a time to kind of shuffle around the way that events are run or operate, or are they too bloated, or are there too many of them, or anything like that, this is the reckoning a little bit.
I mean, they're not going to go away, and
no, and I don't want them to either, frankly. So
it's like I get frustrated with GDC because of the prices they charge, but at the same time, I mean, I've been doing this 20 years. I know that they're a much bigger company. My staff is like me and Dan, and now we got Manny helping us on sponsorship side. That's my entire staff. And up until 2 shows ago, the entire staff was me and Dan helping out on occasion too. But it's those aren't going to go away. What we want to do is give more people access to the stuff that couldn't do it otherwise. It's like, and nobody's going to go, you know what? I'm going to spend my money at indie game business instead of going to GDC this year. It's like,
but no, that's good. Having more groups to actually do different things, to actually keep folks accountable in other positions and whatnot. I hope that when people are doing networking events and things like this, they look at the gig and they look at maybe some things that we're not doing right, or things that could be done better, and like other folk, they're like, well, we can do it even better, we can make sure it's this. I'm like, you know what, that never would have happened if we hadn't actually started this, it pushing people in that particular question. So yeah,
we love you too, Sean.
Hey, Sean. Cheers.
All
bud.
right. So yeah, we're over our time, and you actually have a gig to kick off. Unless you've done that while we're doing this.
No, it kicks off in just under an hour. So it starts the 12-hour cycle, and we got I think Manny is starting it off hosting.
Oh, is she?
Yeah, I think so. So then Reb and Rob later on tonight. Great, we got a great crew of people and hosts that actually welcome people and make everyone feel welcome. So it's fun.
It's so it's funny because by the time I get done with my day, I'm tired. I go, hang out with my son, eat dinner, that sort of stuff. I have actually never been in a gig event with other Americans. I'm always on there with Europe, because it's like I jump on like right now and for the next hour or so. It would be interesting if I came back and actually saw what the the American side of this.
It gets loose.
Everybody been drinking a little more. Before we go though, and so if anybody else has got a question or a comment, or missed how Guy used to do porn,
please don't take that out of context, folks. Go back and watch the start of this.
There's your quote. Could somebody like snap that, or whatever you do on Twitch? And there are other things that you all do on the Discord server that need to be called out. Wednesday night, Rob does I've started tuning into this because it's awesome. And because I get to, now we're doing some scouting for publishers. So I let Rob do some of my work for me. And then, but you have him, he sits down and he goes through, new and interesting indie games that you may not have known about, you may not have seen. It's awesome. So what are some of the other things that are happening on the server other than the Friday night hangouts?
Yeah, that's fascinating, isn't it? Like, I know you've got your active Discord as well. Discord is a fascinating platform. I think it's a bit the barrier of entry is a bit tough for folks that aren't used to using Discord, but I'd say about half the people that are registered on the gig are in the Discord, and we experiment with stuff. Rob does every Wednesday night. He does like an indie discovery night where he's really on it in terms of like what indie games are coming out and what's happening. So he just goes through things and people chat about it. A lot of the time, the devs of those games are actually in there as well, and they talk about them too. And the rest of it is just trying to find other kind of social things where people can connect. I think there's a narrative writers gathering that's Manny's actually doing, I think, next week. There's a marketing folks venting session, like come and complain about some of your most frustrating, marketing experiences. And then there's just a bunch of other things like, if you're trying to connect with someone at who's the PR person at Microsoft in the UK, then ask in here and you might be able to get connected. Like just helping people in the in-between kind of connect and stay social throughout the week. But honestly, I don't know if it all works, man. Like, it seems to be good and people like it for the moment. We'll keep doing it. But I'm kind of desperate for other people to look at it and come to me and be like, why don't you do this? To which my answer is, can you do that?
All right, so that's exactly it. And somebody commented a minute ago when I said, that I had been doing those shows, nearly so. Let me be clear. Meet to Match always powers our stuff, but
Fedora and the crew, Romy and the crew, great. I love them.
The promotion and the organization, a lot of that is me. And I have the very same thing. So we've started on our server. Kimberly Redatos does every Thursday. She does live pitch deck reviews.
See that? Yeah.
Love to have more stuff like that. But you're right on. People are like, let's do this. I'm like, I'm already, it's like, that is an awesome idea. Do it. That's what Kimberly did. She's like, I want to do this. And I'm like, here you go. There, I think that's awesome. And she has folks in there and gives feedback. And these things, we've had the age of Discord 1.0, which is basically pretty IRC for those of us who are old enough to know what that is.
Yeah.
But there's so much more that we could do with these communities. It's just a bandwidth issue usually for people like me and you.
It's the bandwidth issue, but also it's the saturation issue. Like, I think I think about gig a lot, like I'm like, oh, we got these cool events every week. But you know what? For most people, man, they're like, okay, there's an indie discovery night. You know what? I'm done. I'm going to eat dinner. Like, oh, that happened. Oh, I forgot about that. Like, I just think the bandwidth of so many people is so stretched that to try and push, regular pieces of content, even though we think and we know it's good stuff, or the people running them is good, I think that the appetite there for some of these things isn't always that. That said, like, we had a marketing just general catch up, so that we're like, hey, let's do a marketing night, like it's 7 p.m. and Thursday. Come into the gig Discord and let's have a chat about things. And there was like 60, 70 people that joined. We're like, Jesus, that was, but it's looking at that and going, oh, okay, well that's needed then. Like,
it is.
You obviously want to
exactly.
talk about that. So, having the ability to play around with that and see what does or doesn't work, I think is key. And not getting, as organizers, I'm sure you can appreciate this, not getting down when you do something that you think is cool, but not many people respond to, and realizing that, but the small amount of people that did respond to that, I guarantee this was something valuable and worthwhile to them. Goes back to your student event and things like this, man. You do this big event and then, like, did it work? You don't know, but then you hear 6 people got jobs out of it, and that actually does make it worthwhile. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Dude, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, of course.
So once again, the website that I posted a little while ago, which is like scroll through God knows how many conversations now, and somebody did clip that for me. So you're
great, awesome,
excellent. Sometime in the future, you guys can get turned down for a job because they're just like on Twitter. It's like, what do you mean you were in porn?
Look, there are plenty more dodgy things of me on the internet that could preclude me from working at a whole many of places. So I'm not worried about that one. There is bigger.
All right, I'm going to post this one more time to chat in case you missed it. It is games.industrygathering.com. So that's where you go. Yes, you do have to apply. We are gatekeeping white dudes, basically. And yet this is fun. I love your community because your community. Oh, I'm the one thing I was going to part with. So, you're talking about how people's bandwidth, and they get to the end of the day and it's like, here's this event happening. I just don't have the energy. And Rob Manuel, if you're listening, I'm calling you out on this. One of the reasons I enjoy hanging out on a Wednesday night and watching this is because Rob has the most calming demeanor and voice. And it's like, no matter how stressed I am, it's like, okay, here's what we're going to do. I love what they've done here. He's just very calm. And I'm like, this is so. One night I want to get Rob pissed off just to see what that sounds like.
You got to look. Rob and Mike Williams is one of the regular gig hosts. They have the radio voices. It's beautiful. So yeah,
exactly. And so, hey, Nika, I'm glad you're here. So before we leave, I need you to prove to the people who are watching, this does no good for the people who are listening, that is not a green screen behind you.
Oh,
Do what you did earlier. Yeah, you just I asked
sure.
him before we got started. I was like, "Is that a green screen?" And he just like reaches back there and grabs a thing of whiskey. And I'm like, "Well, okay, it's not."
No, man.
That's,
We were joking before. Like, I feel like I used to own and run a bunch of video game bars, and then spend most of the time at these gaming events in bars. I think my life has revolved around bars quite a bit. Mind you, hey, you don't need to drink in the gig. It's not necessarily a drinking thing. There's no pressure. I want to make that clear. But like, I've spent way too many years in bars.
Hey, let's face it, man. Those of us who were doing this in the 90s and early 2000s, our entire T-shirt collection was nothing but alcohol and video games.
Yeah. It's true.
It is true. It's sad but true. All right, you go start a gig. I've got our master class to kick off here in a little bit. I'm gonna jump over there anyway. Let's see. Good. Is there somebody that we can raid? I always forget to raid people now that we are.
Okay, right.
Let's see what. Here's the other thing. Dan's the one that knows how to do this. So, raid channel. What do we got?
Well, hey, by the way, Joe, I just want to say, like, thanks for having me on the podcast, man. Thanks for having me to chat. This is fun. I love what you've been doing with Indie Game Business. I think it's awesome, and I'm, keen to keep promoting and letting gig folks know about it. So, yeah, man, thanks a lot.
I'm not staring up in space. I'm looking for the pop me a Toad House. Pop me a link. I'll make sure I get that right. Yes. Okay. All right. We are going to raid Memento. She is apparently one of the giggers. All right. And she's got 181. She needs to raid me. That's the. All right, everybody. Thank you so much, Guy, for coming on. We love what you're doing. We're going to continue working with you. Keep up fighting the good fight. And for everybody else, we'll see you next Friday.
Cheers.
Bye.